the simulation for Motorpool, Rod Gillette plays the supervisor of Karen Creemans, a disgruntled frontline mechanic. Daphne Hood is the mediator.
Well, I want to thank you all both for coming here today for mediation, and I want to just go over with you that you realize this is confidential and that you're here voluntarily, and that my role here is just to facilitate the conversation to see if we can come to some kind of working solution for the issues that you present. Would you like for me to call you Mr. Darrell or?
Yeah, Darrell's fine.
Darrell, okay.
You can call me Pete. That's what all the guys in the shop call me.
Okay, Pete. Which one of you all would like to go first? Does it matter? You?
Well, I'm only here because the supervisors say that I have to be here as part of that grievance process, but I didn't realize that. I thought I could just file the grievance and then they would, you know.
Well, that's not the way it works now, you understand.
Okay. Let me just remind you that we want to be respectful of one another and our comments, and we'll speak one at a time and let everybody have their say, and I just ask that you be respectful while we're doing this. Would one of y'all like to start first, or does it matter?
I'm here because I think that I was not treated fairly. I feel like he's always picking on me.
Okay. Is it okay if we go ahead and go first with Darrell? Okay.
She's the one who brought the complaint.
Okay. All right. If you want to go ahead and give us your side of this, give us your what information you have on the situation, go ahead.
Well, I was sitting in the break room, minding my own business, taking my break, and he came in yelling because he said I didn't respond to an emergency call. Well, I didn't know there was an emergency. And next thing I know, he's sending me home from work.
Okay, and
then I didn't get paid for the holiday, so I've lost, a fair amount of my salary, and, I can't afford not to get paid for that holiday.
Okay.
So I didn't think that was fair. I thought, I didn't see that I was doing anything that we haven't been doing for the 10 years I've been working there. So, yeah. I don't know why he sent me home.
Okay, would you like to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think she's only told you about 10% of the situation.
Okay.
As usual, it was the day before Christmas, and we were very, very busy in the motor pool, but there had been a kind of a lull in the action, and we get this request all of a sudden to take care of this one car, some brake problems. It was an emergency situation because whoever needed it had to have it the next day to go on an extended trip. So I looked out there in the break room. Now, mind you, this is before 9 o'clock. The break usually, according to the rules, isn't supposed to come until 9.
But we always take our breaks.
Okay, let's let him finish.
So it's 10 minutes before 9. I look out in the break room. Here she is, sitting there with a couple of other guys, eating a sandwich, having a cup of coffee. So I thought, well, she hasn't got anything to do. So I just said to her, I kind of yelled out to her because it's pretty noisy out there, and she didn't even respond. So I went out there.
Okay. You will have time to give your responses.
I went out there and I said to her, I need you real quick, because we've got an emergency situation here. It's a real quick job. You're the most senior mechanic out here. You know how to do this work. I need you to help get this thing in, fix it, and get it out of here. Well, that's when she starts mouthing off to me. I'm still having my, whatever her lunch or breakfast. She said, I'll do it when I'm through eating. I reminded her it was before 9 o'clock. It's not even the break time yet. But instead, she starts giving me some lip. That's when I said to her, okay, why don't you just go home for the rest of the day, punch out. So she, instead of punching out right away, she got up, started to do the work. I said, I told you to go home, get out of here, or words to that effect. So she punched out and went home. I didn't know anything more about it until now. 10 days later, she's filing a complaint saying that I kicked her out, that I sent her home.
Okay. And you had some responses to
Well,
that?
first of all, I didn't even hear him say anything. You know, the machinery in that place is so loud that unless you're right there, and he chooses always to yell at us from a distance instead of coming into the break room and talking to us. And so I didn't hear him. And as far as being on a break when I wasn't supposed to be, I've been working there for 10 years. And we don't always just go in there at 9 o'clock. Sometimes we go a little early. And I had finished the project that I'd been working on. And rather than go straight on to my next one for 5 minutes, I figured I'll go in there and take my break now, and then I'll get busy on the next thing that I have to do. Okay. So, you know, I don't know what the big deal was. And I got up to do it when I realized that, you know, this was an emergency and needed to be done right away. I got up to do it, and he sent me home anyway. So what was I supposed to do?
Okay. So what I hear you saying is that that you weren't able to hear him request that you do it, and that you felt like that you were using your time wisely by not stopping and starting another job and going ahead and taking a break. Is that a clear?
It was just slightly early, and like I said, those times for that break have not been, you know, in concrete. We
Okay.
fluctuate on the time we take that break all the time.
Okay. All right. And
Well, what she's leaving out is the fact that when I yelled at her to come, I needed her to do some work, she acknowledged me. She gave me a grin and went right on eating. But she knew I was yelling at her or talking to her.
Well, yelling at me was...
Oh, I saw I was yelling. I used my voice. You have to shout loud in that place to be heard. And she heard me.
okay. So is this normally the way you would request somebody to do a job when...
Sure, it's kind of customary that if somebody, keep in mind, this is a very, very loud workplace. So if you're trying to get the attention of somebody who's 50 feet away across the room with all these fans going and motors humming and all, you have to shout. You know, hey, John, I need you, that kind of thing.
I don't understand why you can't just come in the room and talk to us instead of yelling from across the
It's just the way I operate.
Well,
I've operated that way for the 20 years I've been the supervisor there.
well, and people don't like it either.
Well, that's tough.
okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to that? So.
No, I want to get this over with. I got a motor pool filled with cars that need repairs, and I need to get back to work.
So what you're saying is this has been the status quo, and that you've always yelled when you needed them, and that you...
I prefer to say I spoke in a loud voice.
Okay.
Yelled has a certain ring to it that doesn't sound nice.
Okay. But you're saying that this has been how you've dealt with this, and do people always hear you when you do it that way?
Nobody's filed a complaint about me so far. Sure, they hear me.
And this way of getting attention of the workers, you feel like has worked for some time?
Certainly.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I know he yells to get our attention, and, you know, I don't like that. But that is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem for me was not getting my holiday pay and having to go home early and lose that money for that day. And I didn't see that there was a need for that.
And you have a response to that?
Well, yeah. First of all, when she checks out an hour and a half after starting work, you don't pay her for the other 6.5 hours of the day that day. According to our company policy, there are certain legal holidays during the year when a full-time employee gets paid for a holiday if it happens to fall within a normal work week. And that year, Christmas fell within the normal work week, so typically a full-time employee would be paid. Now, the fact she didn't get paid, that was something taken care of, I guess, by the payroll office. I don't recall having stipulated not to pay her for that holiday.
Well, they said that you said not to pay me.
Well, maybe I did. Maybe I got a little angry and said, "Don't pay her."
Okay. So you're thinking that that wasn't your intention to not pay her for that time? Or?
Well, probably. I guess it was my intention at the time, but looking back on it, I guess that was not fair.
Okay. Well, let's go back and let's address the first issue on getting your attention to do a job, to come and do the emergency job. If you could tell me how this would look or how this would take place to where you would feel like it would be more comfortable when he had an emergency job for someone to do, how would you see him being able to let you know there was an emergency job to be done? I mean, this is what started the problem to begin with. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, that's what got it going, was when he came in and yelled at me the second time that I wasn't doing what he'd asked me to do. I understand that it's loud in that room, so yelling per se is not the issue. Although I think sometimes when he yells at me, there's a little edge to his voice, like he's always irritated with me. And I think I do a good job. I mean, I've been there for 10 years, and, you know, I put in my time, and I fix things, and they stay fixed. And, you know, okay, maybe we sometimes flex that break time, but I didn't see that it was as big a deal as what he was saying. And that's what got me hot, was the fact that he was making a big deal out of it. And there are other guys that come in there at different times, and it's never a big deal. So I guess I got my feelings hurt a little bit when he started to, you know, point to me as being somebody who abused that break time. Because, as I said, you know, everybody comes in there at different times. And I thought I was being conscientious by, you know, managing my time well, so that when I got started on this next car, I wouldn't have to stop, go take the break, you know, stop what I'm doing. When I start working a car, I want to get it done. I want to work it straight through.
Okay.
So that was my intention. And the only reason I left that day was because he told me to leave. You know, I mean, the union rep was telling me that rather than keep getting hotter under the collar, that maybe I should just clock out and go home. But like I said, I can't afford to lose that money. So I was going to suck it up and start doing the work. But, you know, then he said to get out of the workplace. So.
Oh, okay. So what I understand that you're saying is that you felt like you may have been being singled out from the other guy? And Mr. Falk, how do you respond?
Well, first of all, I'm going to agree with her on one thing. She's a very competent mechanic. She's worked there for 10 years.
Good.
If she weren't any good, I wouldn't have kept her on for 10 years, okay? I knew she could get that job done. That's why I pointed to her and said, I need you right now. Now, she may have interpreted my voice, my vocal tones, and my pointing the finger in another way, okay? I am sorry for that, if that's the case.
Okay. And do you, can you think of maybe some other way you could have got her attention?
Well, keep in mind, Al, I've got a bad leg, okay? It's hard for me to get up and out of my chair and walk over there and say, may I please have your attention? I get their attention by yelling from my desk.
Okay.
And I'll probably continue to do that. If she wants me to come and speak to her individually and give her an invitation to do a job, okay, I'm willing to do that.
That's not what I'm asking for.
Okay. So what are you, what are you asking for? What do you want in this perfect
I just want him to
workplace?
treat me like he treats the rest of the guys.
Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't know how I treat some of the other guys. Excuse me, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I understand about his leg. I feel bad about that because I realize that it gets really painful a lot of the time. So, you know, I can kind of see what he's saying about not wanting to get up and come in. And, you know, but I just, the thing I can't get past is losing this money, you know? I mean...
Okay. What I hear you saying is that she's a very good employee. She does her work well, and you respect the job she does. Is that a clear assessment of her working? Okay.
Yeah, she's got an attitude, but she's a good employee.
And then I heard you say that maybe that having the pay deducted could have been maybe a kind of a spur of the moment kind of reaction.
Yeah, the accountant asked me, what do you want to do about her holiday pay? And I said, she doesn't get it. That wasn't a very nice thing to do. I was under a lot of pressure.
So if we talked about returning that pay to her, and then talked about how we could hand out emergency jobs in the future and how we can respond, would that be possible? Would that be something you could consider?
Well, I'm not so sure that we can return the pay. We might have to take that same amount of money and spread it out over a couple of pay periods.
And how would that work in your work?
Well, it's not ideal, but, you know, I don't know how the payroll thing works.
I'll have to look into that.
Okay. So we can say that you are willing to check and see if you can return the pay in some form or other, and you're willing to accept that?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, you know, that I just get a sense sometimes that he doesn't really care for me and as a person. And, you know, I'm surprised actually to hear that he thinks that I do a good job, because he's not one to give out a lot of compliments. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I always figured he just tolerated me, basically. That's kind of the impression I got. So this is new information that you think that I do a good job.
Do you think maybe the work environment, the loudness, and the fact that it's hard to get people's attention in that work environment, do you think that may have contributed to your perception?
Well, it could be, because, I mean, if you're yelling, sometimes you don't know if they're yelling because they're mad or they're yelling to be heard. So, you know, that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
She ought to quit while she's ahead here. Now, I told you.
Okay.
When I yelled at you said...
Let's calm down.
All right.
Okay, let's calm down. What I want you to think about, let's brainstorm about, this seems to be a point of contention, is the yelling to get people's attention. Is that one of the things that you feel like your perception is, that he treats you different because he yells? Or
I mean, usually when he talks to me, it's to, you know, complain or tell me I'm not moving fast enough, or, you know, whatever. So, you know, my assumption is that that's what he thinks of me. You know, so when he yelled at me that day, I'm sure that was the first thing I thought of, was that he, you know, was not satisfied with my work, and you know, I take it personally.
So, but you, and you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I really do, but I think I'll just keep my mouth shut.
Okay. Well,
see, and that's how I feel. I feel like there's a lot of stuff he feels about me that, you know, is just kept inside.
It ain't just you, lady. You told me to talk to you like I talked to the other guys. I talk to the other guys this way. I'm a guy with a loud voice. I shout a lot.
Okay.
All right.
Let's calm down.
You asked me if I had anything to say.
Yeah, okay, and you said it. Is there anything that maybe the employee could do, that Ms. Darrell could do, that would change the way you react to her? Or?
Maybe I should just text her.
Well,
We're not allowed to have those on while we're working, you know.
Yeah.
Well, let's brainstorm a little bit about how maybe, because this is a loud environment, is there some sort of system that you could come up with that when you had an emergency job, could there be like a red piece of paper go up on the wall or something like that? Is there anything like that you could do?
Why doesn't she bend a little bit? Why doesn't she just say, okay, if you want to yell at us, yell at us? She heard me the first time. We're not going to go back over that. That's all. That's water under the bridge. But I've been operating this way for all these years. Nobody else has a complaint. She's the only one with a gripe about how I yell at them. I'm not yelling at them. I'm trying to get their attention in a loud atmosphere.
And that's what, we're kind of, you don't think that there's any way we could brainstorm and come up with some kind of...
Maybe I could put emergency flags on my door. I could just run up the flag or something.
Well, that's
if you just would say outright, look, I know you're having your break. I need this done on an emergency basis because somebody's needing it tomorrow. I would have been happy to do it, but the way you came in there was more about why are you taking your break, and you're not supposed to be taking your break, and the emergency was not talked about initially.
Technically, you weren't supposed to be taking your break.
Okay, well, let's talk about the break time. Okay, what is the policy for the break?
The policy is they come to work at 7 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, they get a break, 15 or 20 minutes, whatever it is. Have a cup of coffee, go use the phone, eat something. But more and more over the years, they've kind of begun to cheat on that a little bit. So the employees start knocking off about 8:45 and taking a break for 20 or 25 minutes. Nobody's really raised any issues about this. We just kind of accepted it. Now, maybe what I ought to do is really crack down and say, don't anybody go into that break room before 9 o'clock.
But what about my point of wanting to do the break before I got started on the next job? I mean...
It's legitimate.
Okay.
It's legitimate.
Okay, so you agree that was good time management on her part?
I guess I wouldn't have phrased it quite that way, but yeah, I guess that's good time management.
Okay. So how could we state this to where it could be policy within the shop that it was... Is that a case-by-case basis, or would it be better to have some sort of stated policy that if you finish a job and you're within so many minutes of break, it's okay to go ahead and take your break? Would that be possible? How would you feel about that?
Actually, that's kind of like how we've been doing it all these years,
Okay.
informally, unofficially.
Okay.
You start writing up little rules about how you nudge that break a little bit, and pretty soon you've got this long treatise of some kind. Let's just go with it on an informal basis like it's been working for years.
Okay, but how do you feel about that? If we go ahead and just let it happen?
That's what we've been doing, and that's why I didn't understand why he was, focusing on the break thing, because that is exactly how we've been doing it, and that's why I just assumed that since the break issue, didn't seem to be the real issue, I figured that, he had some other issue with me, so I probably got defensive and. I said some things I probably shouldn't have said too, so.
So, Mr. Falk, is there something else you would like to say to Darrell that other than the break and not being able to get her attention, is there something else that day that was...
I have my own issues to deal with that she doesn't know anything about. I'm not going to get into those. I'll just say, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry it happened. Go home to the wife and the kids, okay? You get your Christmas bonus. But the next time I yell at you across the room, I want you to respond. not just keep eating a sandwich and smiling at me.
And you're okay with that? So can we be assured that you'll be able to hear and know what he's saying if he's yelled? I mean, do y'all feel comfortable with that in the workplace? Because the loudness is not going to change.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's it, the loudness is an issue, and you know, I guess it's going to be hard to find a solution to that. I suppose normally when he yells, you can kind of tell that he's just being himself, and you know, this time it seemed like there was a little bit more to it. So
what if you had like a card with the different mechanic names on them, and if you needed one of them, you could hold them up or something like that? Would that be possible?
No, the operating procedure doesn't work that way. Everybody else, every other mechanic in the shop that day was already busy working on something. She was the only one who was just sitting there. That's why he called to her.
Oh, I thought that there was other men taking...
the union rep was there too. He was,
Well, the union, she was sitting there talking to the union rep.
Okay.
I mean, that didn't make any difference who she was talking to. It's the fact that she was the only mechanic who at that precise moment was not doing something, and therefore she was available, in my mind, to work on this project, okay? Now, if she'd been working on a car, I would have yelled at somebody else who was free at the moment.
So...
see, I figured he was just yelling at me because I was taking a break early.
So you think
when he yelled at me, that was the assumption, and that irritated me.
Okay,
And
so you think it may have been your perception and really not...
Now that I have, you know, now from hindsight, yeah, you know, I realized he was yelling to get somebody to start working on the car, but at the time, you know, I just thought he was being cranky like he always is.
Well, what we have is Mr. Falk has apologized and has agreed to go ahead and give you your pay. However, it's worked out with the payroll department. Am I clear in that?
Yeah.
And you agree to be more responsive when he needs you to do something and check with him?
Yeah, I mean, if he trusts that if I'm taking my break, it's because I'm trying to juggle things in a way that I can, you know, work on it like I like to do, which is just go for it and get it done.
And Mr. Falk, am I clear that you agree that it's okay if you finish a job to go ahead and take your break within what?
Well,
5 minutes, 10 minutes of break time? 10 minutes of break time?
Don't knock off at 7:15 for your break time till after 9.
So within 10, 15 minutes of break time and you finish a job, then it's okay. Is that agreed? And then you agree to be more responsive when you know he's trying to get your attention because you all are respectful for the fact that it's a loud environment? Is that agreeable?
Yeah, now that I know that, you know, he understands what I'm doing, then obviously if he's going to be yelling at me, it's not going to be because I'm taking the break at 5 minutes early or whatever. So, you know, now I'll realize that there's probably something else that needs to be done.
Okay. All right. So we think we can continue to work together and...
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is getting that money, and if he's willing to do that, then, you know, I'm willing to work with it.
Okay. Let's shake it.
All right.
Gosh, you know what? I think you work in my husband's shop.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's go ahead and keep your mic on because we're going to record the debrief as well. And a couple of phases here. I'd like to hear from the mediator how you saw the process unfolding, what you thought went well and what was challenging for you. And then I'd like to hear feedback from the parties, something a mediator doesn't always get a chance to have. So from Darrell and Falk's perspective, what did this mediator do that helped you feel heard, helped you feel like your issues and concerns were going to be addressed, and helped you feel like you were moving forward toward a resolution? Or things that she did that didn't work so well for you or made you wonder if she was taking sides or anything that raised
So
a
you want
red
this in
flag for you.
character? You want the
I want to hear from the
responses?
characters.
Okay.
I want to hear from that perspective. And then a third phase could be we'll all drop our roles and as mediators talk about what we learned or what we'll take from this. So let's start with you,
Okay.
Daphne. Your bird's eye view of the process, what worked well, what was challenging.
Well, first off, this arrangement, very bad. Because I felt like when I was trying to focus in on her, that I felt like I was turning my back on him. And so this type of arrangement, not good.
So if you were to do it over again, you would maybe sit where Rod is or where Mr. Falk is, and then have the two parties sitting where you could look at both
Right,
of them
right.
pretty much at the same time.
Right, yes. Or either have them across, sitting by each other.
Okay.
The other thing is, I think it was unclear to me from the beginning that at first I thought the real problem was the noisy shop. And I still not sure that we ever got to the real problem, but they were willing to agree to, because it was always been okay for them to take the break a little early, and then this day. He said that he was having a bad day, and it could have just been, but and this is part of me, I keep wondering, is there something else under there that we're not getting to? And I wasn't quite sure how to get to that, because he was difficult to, he wasn't very forthcoming with information.
Okay.
So,
Anything else about the project or process that was, worked well? You really thought that a question or a response helped, or things that you found challenging?
well, I think I like the reframing. I think that the characters are Mr. Darrell and Mr. Falk both responded to the reframing when they heard it coming from me that, well, yeah, that was doable. The only other thing that was, I think they were ready to settle, and I kept trying to get to the real problem.
Okay.
So,
And so even as you came to an agreement here, you still had concerns that maybe something deeper hasn't been resolved. So you still had some concerns about
yes.
that. Well, let's turn to the parties, to Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Ms. Darrow, and Mr. Falk. And from your perspectives, give feedback to the mediator. What did she do that helped you feel heard? What did she do that raised concerns for you?
I certainly felt like she was, neutral in the process. I didn't feel like she was on one person or the other side, so I appreciated that. And I did, it was helpful to hear her tell me how she perceived, what he was doing, because for me, it just seemed like, he was just being ornery, and she was able to make that look a little bit different.
So even if you had felt maybe disrespected or something with him talking loudly or yelling, when Daphne was saying, brought out things about the reason, the leg or the noise in the shop, that helped you feel maybe there was another explanation for it.
There's some things that I hadn't considered, about what was going on. And when I heard, when he reminded me about the leg thing, I remembered about that.
So some of the things that Daphne did helped you see things from Mr. Falk's perspective,
Yeah.
the things that you hadn't considered before. Anything else that you want to say about your mediator?
Well, I appreciated her being here because, sometimes he can get really overbearing. And I felt like, she kind of kept him in check a little bit. So I appreciated that.
How about you, Mr. Falk? Feedback for the mediator.
Well, I think a couple of things. I threw in that leg thing, as a sympathy tactic. I thought, okay, here I am yelling at this poor critter out there in the workshop, which makes me the bad guy. But if I have a reason for yelling, why not use the bad leg routine? Hard to get up out of my chair and go across that 50 feet of concrete. So I'll play on the sympathy of the judge a little bit, see how that works. I thought, well, maybe that tones me down. The other thing I think was wise, that restraining hand that she would put out from time to time, it becomes necessary to do that. And I thought I knew you were going to do it, but I just wanted to goad you into it.
So you didn't take offense and felt that it was a positive part of the process when Daphne would kind of regulate some of your contributions?
No, I didn't take offense because it's what she has to do.
Okay.
When you have an overbearing, ornery curmudgeon running the motor pool. I thought we were going to wind this thing up about 5 minutes earlier because I think we were throwing out all kinds of clues that we were going to agree. And as you said, you wanted to keep getting at that underlying issue. There really weren't any, other than the fact that I had a bad hair day that day, and we had a lot of work to do, and that was my concern. We were very busy. But there were no other underlying issues.
Well, I think if I can say that, I mean, I think you were right in one hand because, you know, when you said that, he reminds me an awful lot of my dad.
Uh-oh.
And, you know, maybe some of my reaction to him has to do with the fact that, you know, I can just hear my dad yelling at me.
So I'm your dad and your husband.
Let me press you on that a little bit and say, so it sounds like you're saying that the result that you all came up with here today sets this to rest, the incident of the grievance and that is it. But do you also feel that what you've decided on today gives you confidence that this wouldn't happen again in the future?
Well, now that I know the leg doesn't exist, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I mean,
See, can I say something?
Yeah.
See, that was my concern. If the noise was the problem, we've not come up with a system to where he can hold up a card or something. That's what I was trying to get him solution focused.
And they really didn't join in.
And he didn't want to hear about any solutions.
He, to put words in your mouth, you can correct me, you like the informality of the current system for the brakes, and aren't really interested in maybe some kind of change that might require more than what you've been doing for years.
No formalizing of this thing. No writing out point by point. I will raise my hand. I will raise a flag. I will put up a red card. To me, the solution is going to be I'll continue to shout loud, and when I shout, I hope you will look at me.
And it sounds like you need to shout often, sometimes because of the noise, sometimes because it's an emergency. And what I'm wondering, and I thought Daphne did a good job of bringing this out, is that during that incident, you thought he was upset because you were on break, and you were upset because she wasn't being responsive enough to the emergency. And my question is, how in the future is she going to know when it's an emergency and when it's just loud in there?
Yeah, I didn't make that clear.
Well, my response, I guess, would be I'm never going to shout unless it's an emergency.
Okay. Or, like, and you asked this too, you know, are there things to balance this too? I mean, one thing you could do in future is if you're eating your sandwich and he's yelling at you, you know, through sign language or shouting back, you know, can I finish my sandwich or is this an emergency?
well, see, I asked that, but and when he just, you know, when he kept yelling, then in my mind, it seemed like what he was really yelling at was the fact that I had taken the break early. And so I didn't even get to the emergency part until after we'd already started going at each other, so.
Okay. Anything more you want to say as parties? Then let's drop the roles and just talk as mediators. Anything from this experience that was a learning point or something that's still a concern or a question?
This is tough. These are tough ones because
He's a crotchety.
yeah, I mean, you know, when
It's
you
a role.
when you have somebody that, you know, is that has that much of a powerful presentation, you know, and clearly, you know, it's exaggerated by the fact that that's part of my issue is that, you know, or that character's issue is that he's so powerful that I'm kind of did the only thing I could think of to balance the power, which was to file the grievance. And so I think, your efforts to somehow get a balance back, even though obviously this isn't perfect, because you and I both know, we all know, that the chances of us having a run-in again are pretty high, just given the circumstances. But the fact that you were able to elicit some positive feedback from him to me.
Yeah, I felt like that was really important, because I think in a mediation, when somebody hears something positive, it kind of puts them in a different mind frame. Well, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe we can work on this.
I thought that was a key moment, and one of the things that you did really well was grabbing onto that and acknowledging it. When he said she's a competent mechanic, that's why I've kept her around all these years and all this, and he probably added some grouchy things along that, but you came back, acknowledged that, and repeated it. So she heard it twice, once from him with all the rough edges, and once from you. And what you're saying, people push each other's buttons, and they have this escalation cycle, but then there's also this conciliatory cycle. And when someone makes a conciliatory gesture, she's not a bad mechanic. She just didn't jump when I said to. I was frustrated that day. I've got these other mysterious pressures I don't want to talk about.
This mysterious leg.
But so you supported that conciliatory gesture and made sure that she heard that, because it might have been easy for her to miss that in all the other stuff too. So I thought that was a very good thing that you did. And related to that, you were doing some acknowledgement. I only wrote this down. I think you probably did it with Rod's character as well. But so you felt singled out. You felt treated differently. So kind of that acknowledgement. I just didn't happen to write anything down but I believe you did it with Rod.
Yeah, I think I told him you felt like she wasn't responding. Trying. I think that.
And
was,
you did say that he wasn't treating me. So I felt like he wasn't treating me the same as everybody else. I remember you saying that. So again, that means you're hearing me, which is very important in what seems to be an imbalance of the power.
Daphne, say a little bit more about, you thought there might be something more here, and it felt like the parties were ready to just be done with it and move on.
Well, it felt to me like while they were ready in this incident to come to a solution, I still felt like there was something in the environment that we weren't acknowledging. And I felt like from them, particularly Grouchy, he didn't want
Mr. Falk.
he didn't want to go there. He didn't want to go there, and I couldn't get him to think about it. And I just finally felt like I gave up, because you can't make somebody go where they don't want to go. And I felt like the environment, I kept getting the impression from what they were saying that there was something in the environment that we needed to address.
So, and let me ask you, I agree with you. You got to try, and then if a horse won't drink, you can't make him drink. If it hadn't been for the kind of constrained format here where we're videotaping this, would you have considered perhaps meeting separately with each party to press that issue a little bit more?
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that would have been a good thing to do. Or maybe, would y'all like to follow up later on?
Something like
that would probably been good. But I just felt like you're right. When he wouldn't go there, that would have been a good. I didn't pick him.
That we would do that here in this
Right,
context, but it might have been a choice or a tool that you could have considered.
I mean, I think you obviously picked up on the underlying issues. I think the underlying issue was probably viewing him as, the dad figure for me in terms of my response to his hollering, because I kind of got the impression from what we read and also just from the conversation that place is going to be noisy, and there's nothing you can do about that, and when he hooked me with his bad leg routine, then I realized, well, if it bothers him to get up, then clearly requiring him to get up and come and into the room to say what he has to say isn't being fair. So I'm already doing another one down thing. I'm giving more to the process and believing that
See,
what
and
he's saying is true.
I felt like he just didn't want to hear about any possible solutions. And
Well,
you
the
know,
Lynn thing pretty much shut you down on that.
well, no, he could sit at his desk and
But
wave a card.
it did come out from both sides, because for the example, the option of texting.
Yeah.
I mean, you said, well, why don't I just text you? And sometimes things thrown off in jest or, you know, well,
But see,
why don't
we're
I
not
just
allowed
text
to
you?
use.
And you said
Yeah.
we're not allowed to use that. And so, but that could have been something that was explored further. So you're not allowed to use it so you don't make personal text and get distracted from your work. Is there a way that you could do a remote notification of your mechanics?
Like
you
a
know, so that you
beeper.
wouldn't have to get up from your
Yeah,
desk.
and that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
get at is, you know, a beeper.
Or a video screen up on the wall or
Yeah.
something that you
I
know,
think that
if
he and
the-
I weren't kind of seeing some alternative. I mean, the alternative that we were seeing is either you yell or you don't.
Yeah, and see,
So
I was
that might have
suggesting
been-
like the cards and stuff, but what I was hoping they would take that and say, well, that won't work, but maybe,
Exactly, and
Yeah,
ideas like that.
and I
I'm not
wanna-
going to raise flags or something like this, but what could we do that would be a signal that you could do from your desk that wherever Darrow was, she would know, I need you, it's an emergency.
yeah. And that's what I was getting at, but I felt like he was going to have to come up with it in order for him to buy into it.
And he's not interested in changing. He's
No.
been doing this for
Yeah.
years, and it's always worked, and...
So that's why
Expressed else.
I backed off of it. So
You
I-
also, you don't want me to treat you like the guys. You wouldn't, you know, so we
I
kind of
didn't
got...
touch that.
Yeah, okay, third rail. Good idea.
That was good not to touch that?
And you know, when he said that, the character, when he said that, then the character's thinking, what does he do to the other guys? That he
That's what I was thinking.
So I wasn't going to say anything else because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, he must be right. Maybe I don't.
If
don't
I
want
was,
that.
that might have been something to address separately.
Yeah.
But one thing, I was thinking, what would I do in that situation? I might have done something like that. So what you're talking about is not, you know, the same exact treatment as everyone else. You are wanting to feel like you're respected in the same way that the others are, and felt that you were being treated differently or singled out because of this. And you want to be able to just be yourself in the workplace and not have to feel like you've got a different set of rules for one employee than the others.
Was Daryl a woman? Sometimes I thought you were female, and sometimes I thought
Yeah,
you
pretty
were
much.
we turned her into.
a female. Okay.
I was tempted, and I thought better of it. I'm going to say something to the effect about, you're a very competent mechanic for a gal.
Or a woman, yeah.
I thought, oh no, that'll open a whole new can of
Yeah,
worms.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although that could, I mean, that's not something we wouldn't have heard before. and then-
Yeah.
No.
But so let me hear, Paul, you're saying that when he said you don't want me to treat you like the other guys, you think it was probably a safe bet not to go there with him? Because for a moment it crossed my mind, and I thought, oh my God.
That was good, because we just heard it that once. You know, if it had kept coming up in some other way, I can't tell you about the things that go on there. Or if he'd have kept saying things like, well, you know, the guys and I, we spend an hour every day, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't want to be there. You know, and if there was something that was clear that she was being excluded, I mean, I got the impression that it was just an old boy talking about, I talk rough around the guys and clean it up around a woman.
And that's kind of the way I took it, that, you know, I'm trying to be respectful of females.
And if it, you know, and so I think letting that just kind of settle. But if you'd heard it again or heard something else, then you might have wanted to address it. So I thought that was okay.
Yeah. We kind of left out that one piece about me that with apparently the cursing, which that was. Did you see that? Where apparently one of the things that I did was I had a bad mouth.
You did?
Yeah.
I guess.
And that was one of the things that one of the reasons you sent me home was that. And I don't know that it would have made much difference. I mean, we just would have had some additional.
Yeah, I don't see that mentioned in this brief.
Somewhere around.
I think I
Let's,
remember seeing that.
Yeah.
One thing we'll do.
Using obscene language.
Paul is going to make a copy, 3 copies of this, and send each of you home with it. And then you and I, for sure, and the 3 of us, if we want to, the 4 of us, if we want to, can view that at some point and, you know, talk
Critique
more
it.
about it. This is just kind of we just did it thing, and we can think more about it. Certainly, if you watch it and have questions or concerns, you and I should talk about that. But in the interest of doing another round, let's take a brief break. It's right at 4 o'clock, and that took us about, well, we got started a little bit after 3. So let's take maybe 10 minutes to be ready to start a mediation.
Okay.
And the restrooms are down by the elevator. If you need
Yeah.
them. Downstairs, there's coffee and...
Someplace I-
Turn off your mics.
That's right.